Anesthesiologists of Reddit, what was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was under? I was giving a young female patient sedation for a routine colonoscopy, and as I pushed the propofol, sleepy medicine, it started to hit her. She sat straight up and yelled to everyone in the procedure room, "I shaved my asshole for you," and she flopped down on her pillow and she was asleep. I was coming out of the fog of anesthesia from a colonoscopy. Apparently I didn't recognize my wife and refused her affections, telling her she was pretty, but I was married. Got big brownie points for that. My dad asked my mom to pick up his butt cheek so he could fart and it was too heavy. Kind of on topic, when my mom woke up after having a stroke, the doctor asked if she recognized the people in the room. She got my sister's name right, called me my brother's name, and smiled real big at my stepdad and called him asshole. Apparently when I was going under I told the anesthesiologist, "Don't mess this up, I know where you work." My husband had knee surgery. After he woke up he half yelled half whispered apple juice, so the nurse gave him apple juice, several small cups full. He grinned like a toddler and said apple juice and immediately flopped back and went back to sleep for all of 10 minutes until he woke back up gasping that he couldn't breathe. His mom, who I had met maybe 1 or 2 times at this point, went up to the foot of his bed to grab a nurse in the doorway and he bolted upright. That man projectile vomited pure apple juice directly into her face/body/the wall/the door/hallway. I have never seen anything like it in my entire life. His mom stood there soaked in juice vomit and he just rubbed his eyes and said, "Ah, I feel better, bam." Back to sleep for another 2 hours, lol. Was under anesthesia for a breast reduction. As I was coming out, my nurse was talking to me and apparently I started saying, "Oh my god, it's an angel and she looks like Barbie." I kept yelling for Barbie angel and possibly kept trying to hug her and pet her hair. I cried for her on the way home. She called to check on me later that night and referred to herself as Nurse Barbie Angel. She was the sweetest. My aunt, who notoriously despises fast food, old Mexican lady whose food is as good as it gets, woke up and looked at my uncle and said, "Are you the sexy man that's gonna take me to McDonald's?" If you knew her you would know that she would never say that. She has never lived it down. I was under general anesthesia to get my gallbladder removed. As I was being wheeled back through the double doors there was a giant TV screen that listed the surgeries going on. I was way too loopy to actually read it, but I swear I saw elbowectomy and started hysterically laughing over the idea of removing an elbow and being left with a floppy arm. Apparently what I actually said was elbow jello and then passed out. I'm an anesthetist. Woke up a 70 years old PT who got a penile prosthesis implant for erectile dysfunction. First thing out of his mouth in his post-surgery stupor was to request a private room and find out when he could take this baby out for a test drive. He was a happily married jokester. Had my wisdom teeth out. When I woke up I was so excited to get my now extracted teeth and keep them as a souvenir. The nurse said I couldn't. She wheeled me out to the front door where my wife was waiting to load me into the car. She saw my disappointed face and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" I turned and pointed to the nurse and said through my gauze-stuffed mouth, "This effing bee won't let me keep my teeth." My stunned wife apologized and the nurse explained that it's fine but they were a biohazard, to which I replied incredulously, "They were in my effing mouth an hour ago." Edit. On a slightly related note, my mother-in-law has promised me that I can have her titanium hip after her cremation for a shifter in my car. Love that woman. I had an ovarian cyst removed a year ago and woke up from the anesthesia saying hand please and making grabby hands with both my hands until the nurses finally came over and held my hands for about 5 minutes while I just smiled and tried to go back to sleep. I hadn't done that in a decade. I used to do it to my dad all the time as a kid to express that I wanted to hold his hand while I slept. Nurse here, was 22-year-old female, had a teen boy come out of anesthesia who looked at me and said, "Hey, you're the girl from last night." I had to reassure everyone that that wasn't me. Patient here, came out of anesthesia and heard Gaudier's Somebody that I used to know playing in the recovery room. I asked my significant other why they were playing it at like 10x the normal speed and the nurse just goes, "Okay, so she's not ready to go home yet, lol." I'm an anesthesiologist. The best story was a 40-some-year-old woman for appendectomy, said while I'm giving the propofol to induce anesthesia. She said, "Oh, I don't remember it tasting like that before," slurred. I said, "What does it taste like?" Since propofol doesn't usually elicit a taste reaction. She almost yelled "D's nuts" and was promptly under anesthesia thereafter. There have been other stories, but this one has the entire staff rolling laughing for minutes after she was under. My husband was put under to get his wisdom teeth out. He was a little anxious and also is just kind of anal. He's an engineer, so he read his pre-op instructions front to back like a dozen times. One of the things it said was, "You may experience profound disorientation upon awakening." As he woke up, He opened one eye and looked around the room, then said extremely huffily, "I wouldn't call this profound." Then he started crying. My husband had his ACL and meniscus repaired. When they brought him back into the room, he stared at me through half-closed eyes until the nurses left and then said, "I love you. I'm glad you're here." I melted. Then he conked back out for about half an hour and woke up with a big gasp. I thought he was in pain, that's how loud it was, and went, "Burger King burger." I said, "You want a Burger King burger?" He said, "I do." Oh. So I had to get him a Burger King burger for dinner. He doesn't remember anything until he was back home several hours later with Burger King sitting in front of him. Lol. As I put someone out for a colonoscopy one time, the patient said, "You're cute, are you gonna see my butt?" Then she was out. Edit, for those of you asking, yes, for colonoscopies we typically use deep sedation. This is in the US. 99.9% of the time this means propofol, the Michael Jackson drug. Most of us will give some lidocaine through your fore first. This helps prevent the burning sensation in your fore that propofol can sometimes give, and follow it right up with propofol to knock you out. Almost never need analgesics like fentanyl. I gave a patient an 4 dose of ketamine for a pain procedure. He proceeded to tell the room that everyone had turned into cartoon characters, and then he announced he was melting into a wall of butter. Still my finest achievement as a physician. One of my patients coming out of sedation embarrassed her husband who was in the room by saying that during their sex he likes to have Vicks rubbed on his backside. I ask a patient after surgery how he feels. He opens his eyes, stares me dead on and says, "With my fingers." Then he goes right back to sleep. A little girl was going under and she was holding her mother's hand. She reached out for my hand with her other, and as she was going out she joined mine with her mother's and said, "You would be a nice daddy." I probably went beetroot red as I blushed. I woke up singing the Magic School Bus theme song while someone 3 beds away was screaming in agony. My husband woke up from anesthesia after a colonoscopy just after the doctor walked in. He didn't see the doctor in and told me, "No blowjob for you," then fell back asleep and ripped a big fart. The doctor looked at me and busted out laughing. He said not to be embarrassed. People say the weirdest things, but this one he'd remember. I got put under for my wisdom teeth at 17. When I came to, the nurse or whatever was like, "Okay, you're probably a little groggy, just sit tight for a while," and I was like, "F that, I feel amazing," and proceeded to swing my legs off the table, which sent my top half spinning right after it and falling flat on my face. People laughed. I remember the laughter. A girl woke up and asked if she had been hit by a train, and then when asked if she knew why she was there, she looked down and patted her chest and said implants. She was having her ACL repaired and her mom was there. It was me. I was 19. I've never lived it down. I was brought home after by my wife but was still loopy. She told the construction workers outside to make sure I didn't leave the house. They let me help pour concrete and fixed what I effed up. Nice guys. My daughter made them free limeade, so they were always cool with us. This guy I was dating, he asked me to take him to get his wisdom teeth removed. He told me that anesthesia doesn't affect him a lot and we were supposed to go on a road trip the next day. So anyway, he gets wheeled out of the dentist by an old nurse. I'm behind the driver's seat and I see him smacking his lips looking up at the sky. She opens my car door and he said, I love her, and quat. He then proceeded to ask me to marry him several times. He tried to pull out his gauze and I told him stop, and he said, "Man, this bee is bossy," and quat. Then he wanted a mother-in-law shake. I would suggest a place and he would scream no. Finally we agree on a place and he tells me he'll give me directions. I drive for 15 minutes before I ask him what we're doing and he said he has no idea. We're in the drive-thru and he says, "I have something for you." I swear I thought he had bought me a ring the way he had been proposing for last hour. It was his newly extracted teeth. "They let me keep them. I want you to have them," and quat. He lived on base at the time and was yelling at the gate while they checked his ID for them to hurry up. I finally get him to his room. In bed. He's happily eating his mother-in-law shake with a spoon. His mouth was a mess of blood and mother-in-law shake. He asked me for a kiss. I gave him a peck. We're married now. Patient here. I was a teen. Apparently before I went under I kept mumbling, "It's buried, don't worry. Stop worrying, it's buried, it's gone." My mom was there and said the staff were eyeballing her uncomfortably, and years later to this day every year she still asks me if remember anything. That if ever I need to talk she'll support me no matter what. I honestly do not know what I meant. My husband had to undergo a colonoscopy, and when he came around he started aggressively grilling the staff about Abraham Lincoln. He isn't a historian or anything. He works as a business analyst and knows next to nothing about Abraham Lincoln. Bonus story. One time he took Ambien and got super effed up. Initially told me that he couldn't walk up the stairs to bed because he was a transformer and his legs had turned to wheels. Finally got him upstairs and he made the observation that if peach trees could sing to each other like whales it would be beautiful. I bet they would sing Adele. Then he burst into tears.